I knew things had changed when Ronnie Stetzer came back to town. At one time, he was the fiancé of my wife, Cindy. Ronnie broke up with Cindy a year before I met her. She made no secret of the fact that Ronnie broke her heart when he decided to break up with her and marry a rich woman 10 years older. I started dating Cindy. She didn't have the gorgeous looks of a model or a movie star, but she was very pretty. She had soft brown hair and brown eyes, a beautiful face, but it was her loving heart that drew me to her. We got married about a year later, and our little girl, Amanda, was born 9 months later. Life was good for 18 of our 19 years together. We had our differences, but nothing serious until recently. Usually our disagreements arose when we divided responsibilities. Cindy was the only child in the family and was spoiled by her parents. However, over the years, she learned to curb her stubbornness. When our daughter was born, Amanda became my little princess. We were especially close and our family was very friendly. However, over the past year, Cindy and I seemed to be growing apart. I began to realize that we were doing less and less together. However, our lovemaking was very good, and we did it at least twice a week and more often. Cindy seemed the happiest when we were hugging. I knew that she loved me deeply. I still loved Cindy, but in a different way. It was no longer like the hot, passionate love we experienced when we first got married. We were like two old shoes that had seen better days, but fit together well. Yet I loved my wife very much, and especially loved the life we had built. When Amanda graduated from high school, the changes in Cindy seemed to accelerate. She seemed on the verge of a breakdown, and the closer it got to Amanda leaving for college, the more uneasy Cindy became. I was now chief of detectives in the sheriff's department, with 32 detectives under me. Since this county was not a high-crime county, the work was not too stressful. Cindy was still working as a dental hygienist. About a month after Amanda left for college, Ronnie showed up at a barbecue thrown by a couple, John and Ann Smithy, who were more of Cindy's friends than mine. However, John and I got along great because he owned a security company and we always had something to talk about. I had no idea Ronnie would be there, but Cindy certainly did. She immediately pulled away from me, which was not unusual, and began to circle. But an hour later, I went looking for her and found her and Ronnie sitting on the porch. As I approached, Cindy's neck turned slightly red, which meant she was planning something I wouldn't like. She quickly introduced me to Ronnie, and my stomach dropped. As a cop, I developed a gut instinct that told me this was real trouble. Cindy tried to brush it off as if she was surprised to see him and they were just reminiscing about old times. But her neck turned red during the explanation. I decided I wasn't going to make a big deal about this. As a police officer, many times I encounter extremely unpleasant situations. However, it is necessary to handle them calmly and professionally. Sometimes this can be very difficult. The next working day after the barbecue, I checked on Ronnie through my channels. I found out that his wife died of cancer a year ago. In all his years, Ronnie never even had a speeding ticket, let alone any other problems with the police. As the months passed, we saw Ronnie more and more often. I knew this was no accident, so I began to prepare for the worst. I thought that any day now, Cindy would want to talk to me about something. But no matter how prepared I was, Cindy blew me out of the water when she decided to do it. We had just finished a rare morning of lovemaking, and I thought that maybe all my fears were in vain. It was clear to me that Cindy still loved me just as much as before. "Ted, I want to talk to you about something," she said nervously. "And I don't want you to get angry. I want you to let me finish before you say anything." My stomach turned over. "You know Ronnie was my first love," she explained. "We were engaged. Then he fell in love with Catherine and we broke up. After his wife's death, he was devastated. He's so lonely. He tells me he still loves me, and I have to admit that I still love him. But at the same time, I love you." I didn't say a word and tried my best to control my breathing and remain calm. This gave Cindy courage because she smiled and continued. "I still want to be your wife, but I also want to be with Ronnie. Ronnie and I talked it over and decided it was only fair that I stay with you for a week and he stays with you for a week." I slipped out of bed, got dressed, and left without saying a word. I headed to my office and closed the door. The secretary looked at my unshaven face but did not ask. I told her I didn't want to be bothered unless it was something serious. I was left alone. I sat in the unlit office for several hours. I replayed the proposal my wife made to me over and over again in my head. It was the most selfish thing she could do. It was clear to me that Cindy wanted to sit on 2 chairs. This shouldn't happen. She will have to choose. About 5 o'clock, I returned home. I was very annoyed when I saw Ronnie's car in the driveway. I tried to pull myself together and use all my years of police training to stay calm. However, all this training did not prepare me for anything like this. I found them in the living room, sitting nervously. Cindy quickly stood up and came over to kiss me. I pushed her away and saw that she was in pain, but I didn't care. "We need to talk about this," Cindy said nervously. "We have nothing to talk about," I answered briefly. "You either want to be with the idiot or with me. You can't have him and me." "I don't think you've fully thought this sentence through," Ronnie said, looking at me nervously. "I'm not going to take your wife away from you. I'll just give her the extra love she needs. Yes, we will share her, but she will never miss any of her marital obligations." Now the inner rage was almost on the verge of boiling. This smug bastard just told me that I should let Cindy sleep with him because she needs some extra love. They both disgusted me, and at that moment I realized that my marriage was over. "Except," I said, glaring at Ronnie, "the marital duty of giving up all the others." "No, I'm not going to agree." "Ted," Cindy said, with an expression that told me she was now upset with me, "it will happen. The question is whether you will be a part of it or not." "No," I said. "Leave, both of you." Cindy burst into tears. "Ted, please give it to me. All these years I have been a faithful wife. Ronnie was my first love, but I don't want to lose you. I love you so much, but so does Ronnie." I snorted and looked at Ronnie. "Tell me, Ronnie, if your late wife came to you with a similar offer, would you accept it?" He smiled at me and nodded. "If it could make my wife happy, I would gladly agree." "Bullshit," I said with more force than I intended. But I wanted to get my point across, so I turned to Cindy. "What about you, Cindy? If I came home with my ex-girlfriend and told you that I wanted you to share me with her, how would you feel about it?" Cindy hesitated for a few seconds before answering. "I would probably be upset like you are now, but in the end I would agree because I really love you and want you to be happy." "Bullshit again," I said, shaking my head. "In the morning I will contact a lawyer to negotiate a divorce. I think separating assets should be pretty simple. The house only has a small mortgage. Once this is paid for, we will split the proceeds. Our investments, savings, and current accounts will be separated. Amanda's college fund will remain intact. There will be no alimony, since you will live with the asshole sitting there. Now both of you please leave." Cindy cried her eyes out when Ronnie took her hand. Approaching the door, Cindy turned to me and said, "If you change your mind, I love you very much. I want you in my life." As soon as they left, the silence of the house fell over me. I was empty inside, but my years of service in the police taught me self-control. I put the wound in the box and closed the lid. Then I went to my office and started making a list of what I needed to do. I knew exactly which lawyer I would take. Her name was Sally Leone. She had a reputation as a real shark in divorce proceedings. She usually represented the wives, and the poor husbands never knew what hit them. Over the years, our paths have crossed. I helped her many times when needed. I looked through the list and realized there was one thing I hadn't done yet. I have to call Amanda and let her know what's going on. It broke my heart to have to tell my little girl what her mother was doing. It took Amanda a full 5 minutes to calm down so that I could truly understand her. What happened next was unexpected. "How could she do this to you, Dad?" she said venomously. "All these years you have been so kind to her, to us, and now she's stabbing you in the back. If she does this, I don't want anything to do with her." "Amanda," I said calmly, "you are very upset now, and I understand your feelings. But Cindy is your mother, and she loves you unconditionally. Don't ruin your relationship with your mother over this. We all lose if you do this. Can you wait at least a few days before talking?" What if she calls me? Asked Amanda. If she does this, I will give her the full price. Please, if she calls, don't answer for a few days. Promise me that you will do this. Amanda reluctantly agreed to my request. Later that evening, Cindy called me very concerned. She tried to call Amanda but couldn't. I explained that I had spoken to her and our daughter was visibly upset. I explained to Cindy that Amanda wanted to calm down before talking to either of us about the matter. I bet you turned her against me, Cindy accused me. I bet you painted the most disgusting picture you could. Cindy, how can I draw her worse than you already did? I said calmly, knowing that this would anger her. Her mother wants her father to allow her to sleep with another man. Before Cindy could say anything, I decided to tackle one of the items on my list. Oh, since you're on my line, you should hire a lawyer. Please, Ted, don't do this, she cried again. It kills me that you want me out of your life. I love you so much. Could you give me some space? There's nothing to discuss, Cindy, I said, and hung up. I took the next week off to focus on getting all the ducks in a row, but the nights were terrible. Lying in bed alone was unbearably lonely. I would wake up in the morning and reach for Cindy, only to remember why she wasn't there. The first thing I did was call Sally, but was unpleasantly surprised when she said Ronnie had already called her. This bastard was secretive. He must have already figured out who the best divorce lawyer is and is now ahead of me. Well, if I can't hire you, I said, somewhat offended, can you recommend someone I should hire? I said Ronnie contacted me. Sally snorted. I didn't say that he hired me. In fact, I told him that you already hired me. Wow, I said with great relief. I really appreciate you doing this. Ted, most men in this town think I'm a piece of crap, she said bitterly. You are one of the few who have always treated me with respect. You are one of the few who went out of their way to help me. I've always appreciated that. I will never stand against you. Again, I'm very grateful. You still have to pay my fee, she said with a laugh. I really appreciate you, but I also need to pay for the light. It's not a problem, Sally. And thanks again. Even after several days, the phone conversation between Cindy and Amanda did not go well. According to both, it turned into a shouting match, with ugly names being thrown back and forth. Cindy called me later, almost hysterical, that she had lost her daughter forever. I told her I would talk to Amanda and try to work things out, but it turned out to be much more difficult than I could have imagined. Amanda was angry when I spoke to her a week later. According to my daughter, she told her mother that she wanted nothing to do with her. Cindy will not be invited to the graduation or the wedding, and if she has grandchildren, she will never meet them. Now I understood why Cindy was hysterical. The calls from Cindy continued until the day of the divorce. She continued to beg me to reconsider and accept their plan. Of course, I continued to refuse. After the divorce, the calls stopped, and I tried to move on. Thank God I had a job. As chief of detectives, my schedule was quite flexible. Over the next 6 months, I became much more practical. I have often been able to point some of my new detectives in the right direction. This way, they wasted no time going down obvious dead ends. I also started looking through our cold cases. As a result of my efforts, we were able to close a long-forgotten murder case. It turned out that the victim's ex-boyfriend did it. They always had the evidence, but they just didn't see it. For this, I received gratitude and an increase in salary. Cindy and Ronnie got married about a month after their divorce. They wanted to buy my half of the house. But the thought of Ronnie living in my house turned me inside out. Ronnie threatened to go to court to force me to sell it. I told him to go and sue. I was friendly with all the appraisers in town, and when I explained my dilemma, they all agreed to help. The estimates were much higher than the house was worth. Yet Ronnie didn't care. He paid a ridiculously high price for my house. It drove me crazy, but I couldn't do anything about it. In the end, however, I liked the result. I made a lot more money from the sale than I could have. The divorce went better than I thought. I have Sally to thank for that. Her analysis was so thorough that she found information that helped me. The down payment on the house was inherited from my grandfather. Therefore, this amount was not considered public property, As a result, I received about 75% of the proceeds from the sale. With this money, I bought myself an apartment for cash, not far from work. Life goes on, but I would be lying if I said it didn't hurt. All these years with Cindy, and now she decided that I was not enough. I tried to return to the dating scene, but it was even more depressing. Most of the women I dated came with a ton of baggage. Some of them were downright scary, and almost all of them desperately wanted to get married. I, on the other hand, had no interest in marriage. I've already walked this path. One evening, about 8 months after Ronnie and Cindy's wedding, I was having dinner at a restaurant. I didn't know they were there until Cindy got hooked. I was surprised to see my ex-wife, but decided I wasn't going to be nasty. I looked around and saw Ronnie sitting at a table at the other end, studying the menu. "How are you, Ted?" Cindy asked quietly. "I'm fine," I answered with a sad smile. "How are you doing?" "I still miss you every day," she said, placing her hand on top of mine. "I still love you very much. If you ever find it in your heart to accept Ronnie, I will be glad to be with you again." At first, I was going to pull my hand out from under her and tell her to go for a walk, but then an idea struck me. I'll have to talk to Amanda first, but it might be something I can do to get back at that asshole Ronnie. "I miss you too, Cindy," I admitted honestly. "I hate waking up and you're not there, but now you are a married woman. By the way, I think your husband is looking for you." Cindy looked at Ronnie and he looked at her with a "what the hell" expression. She simply nodded to her husband and stood up. "Remember, I still love you." That evening I called Amanda and explained what I wanted to do. At first she was horrified and said that I was inferior to this slut. Then I explained why I wanted to do it, and she started giggling. The giggles turned into general laughter. "This is just wonderful, Dad," Amanda finally said. "Go for it." The next day I called Cindy, with my daughter's blessing. I told her I wanted to talk to her and Ronnie. I told her that I was thinking about our conversation yesterday. Cindy was delighted, and we agreed to meet at our old house at 7 in the evening. I arrived exactly at 7. Cindy led me into the living room. It was unpleasant to see him sitting on the sofa in my former home. However, I took some satisfaction from the annoyed expression on his face. It was clear to me that Cindy had blamed this meeting on Ronnie at the last minute. He looked at me like a dagger. I pretended not to notice anything. After pouring us a cup of coffee, Cindy settled down on the sofa between Ronnie and me. I got straight to the point. "Cindy, what did you mean when you said that the offer to share was still valid?" A smile appeared on Cindy's face. "Yes, of course. The offer is still valid. I told you that I still love you deeply. I just love Ronnie too." "Well, if you agree," I said, trying to feign nervousness, "I would agree. Now I have no one. At least this way I'll have you part of the time. I was so lonely without you." Cindy rushed towards me. She kissed me more passionately than we had ever kissed. "Oh, Ted, you made me the happiest woman in the world." "Wait a minute," Ronnie said, standing up. "We haven't discussed this yet." "It's the same thing you suggested," I calmly told Ronnie. "Yes, but still, Cindy, you and I need to discuss this first." Ronnie was very excited. "We've already discussed this," Cindy said, a little surprised by Ronnie's objection. "When did we discuss this?" Ronnie blushed. "Don't forget, we discussed this before we presented Ted with the plan. You said you're more than willing to share." Ronnie was disheartened by his own words, and there was nothing he could do about it. Still, he wasn't about to give up so easily. "I still think we need to discuss this." It was on the tip of my tongue to point out to Ronnie what a hypocrite he was. It was the same deal he offered me, but now the shoe was on the other foot. He was the husband, and I was the ex. However, I decided to let this drama play out between Cindy and Ronnie without my involvement. "Okay, I'll leave and wait to hear from you, Cindy," I said, kissing her before leaving. Back in the car, I started laughing until I dropped. I switched roles with this idiot. Now he was squirming like a worm. I wish I was a fly on the wall that night. The next day, Cindy called me and said that Ronnie was very upset, but when she told him she would leave, he agreed. Cindy will spend 1 week with me and 1 week with Ronnie. Of course, at Ronnie's insistence, none of this could be done until I was tested for sexually transmitted diseases. I agreed on the condition that they both also be tested. Cindy didn't mind, but Ronnie wasn't happy. As it turned out, we were all clean. The next week, I went to pick up Cindy. Cindy looked fine as she walked up to the door. Ronnie, on the other hand, looked like he had murder on his mind. I grabbed Cindy and kissed her deeply. Then I grabbed her 2 suitcases and we went out. I decided that I would do everything possible to make this night special. I invited her to dinner and then to the dance. Then we returned to my apartment. By the time we got to the bed, Cindy said, "Oh God, Ted, I missed you so much. I really love you to bits." We had hot sex, and more than once during that night we rose to the heights of pleasure. Then we lay and hugged until I fell asleep. The next morning I woke up to Cindy again giving me affection, and we made love again, bringing each other pleasure. Cindy leaned over and kissed me on the lips. I know some of you are disgusted with me for kissing her when I knew exactly what she was doing with that mouth when she was with Ronnie. It didn't bother me at all because I had his wife. The week passed quickly and very pleasantly. I had to work, so I told Cindy she could go home for the day if she wanted. Cindy was adamant she was my wife for the week. It made me cringe internally. Well, if that's what she wanted to believe, then that was fine with me. All I was interested in was that I had Ronnie's wife. She cleaned the house, went grocery shopping, washed my clothes, cooked food, and even set dinner times for us. I had a blast. I even got Amanda to talk to her mother without yelling at her. Of course, Amanda was aware of my plan, and I'm sure she chuckled at how ignorant her mother was. When I drove Cindy home, Ronnie looked both happy and angry. Whatever anger was simmering within him, he kept it in check. He kissed Cindy passionately right in front of me. I just kissed Cindy on the cheek, said, "I love you," and left. Over the next 3 months, our new agreement was implemented. I have to say that this arrangement was great for me. Sex with Cindy after our divorce was a hit. Moreover, this is her proposal. I was now having sex 6 or 7 times a week. Another benefit of this new arrangement was that I convinced Amanda to come home and spend some time with us. I'm not sure if my daughter did this because she missed her mother, or if she was making fun of her. One day, maybe 2 months after this new arrangement began, I was checking on my 3 detective teams working different crime scenes. Then a call came over the radio about a disturbance at Mick's Tavern. Since I was only a block away, I decided to check it out myself. When I got there, I discovered that there had been an altercation with a drunk customer. I was surprised to learn that it was Ronnie who was drunk. I decided to deal with this problem. After dismissing the 2 officers, I turned to Ronnie. "Come on, Ronnie," I said, taking his hand. "I'll take you home. I don't need your fucking help." "Ronnie, your choice is either I take you home or to jail. What's better for you?" He decided to accept the trip home. We didn't say a word the whole way to my old house. When he got out of my car, all he said was, "Fuck you." By the 4th month, Ronnie was less and less happy about our agreement. She and Cindy argued more and more about it. He wanted it all to stop, but Cindy couldn't understand why. I did not interfere in their discussions. I just kept telling Cindy she was beautiful and kept getting all the sex I wanted for a week. This arrangement allowed me to have Cindy much more than when we were married. Finally, when I came to pick Cindy up for a week, about 5 months into our agreement, things started to boil over. Ronnie and Cindy were screaming at each other in the yard. I decided to try to calm them down. "I think you guys should calm down," I said with a grin, "or someone will call the police." "Fuck you," Ronnie said angrily, before turning back to Cindy. "If you go with him, then our relationship will be over." "We agreed, Ronnie," she said with an unpleasant note in her voice. "Since I met Ronnie, I've never seen my ex-wife speak to her new husband in anything other than loving terms." "The agreement is bullshit," Ronnie yelled. "And I tell you again that if you go with him, everything will be over." "It's not serious," Cindy said in a dismissive tone. "You were the one who came up with the idea of exchange a long time ago." With these words, Ronnie burst into the house and slammed the door. I looked questioningly at Cindy. "He's just having a bad day," Cindy said, taking my hand. "He will survive this, and everything will return to normal. Things haven't returned to normal. Apparently, Ronnie has moved out. Cindy tried to talk to him, but he was adamant. They were done. Cindy called me around noon on Wednesday and told me what happened. "He left me, Ted," she said, sobbing. "Can I move in with you?" "Yes, I'll be with you on Monday when it's time for my next week," I said cheerfully. "But Ronnie is gone," Cindy said, confused. "I want to come back to you completely. I understand that I made a huge mistake. Everything Ronnie said about sharing was just bullshit to keep us apart. I want everything to be like before." "Well, you see, Cindy," I said, pretending to be embarrassed. "You wanted me to share with you. You didn't want me to work full-time. So I'm already used to the fact that you're just a part-time wife. I don't think things have changed since Ronnie left. So, do you still want me to pick you up on Monday?" Cindy began to sob uncontrollably, followed by silence. At some point, it seemed to me that she hung up, but the bitter sobs resumed. Finally, after several attempts, Cindy found her voice and stammered, "Yes, yes, please, Ted. I would really like you to pick me up on Monday. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.